Good afternoon. How is everyone today?
Great.
Great. My name is Mary Grove, and I'm the director of Google for Entrepreneurs, and we thank you for joining us today for our special fireside conversation. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome to Google Yoani Sánchez. Yoani is a Cuban blogger and activist who has become a symbol of global free expression. She was born in Havana, Cuba, and studied in Cuba during the years when the Soviet Union was supporting the island and its communist revolution with tangible aid. And this also coincided with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the loss of subsidies that then comprised 80% of Cuba's international trade. Yoani has received international acclaim for her critical portrayal of life in Cuba under its current government. She is best known for her blog, Generation Y, which is translated into 17 languages, and she boasts over 500,000 followers on Twitter. Time magazine named Yoani one of the world's 100 most influential people, and President Barack Obama has applauded her efforts to empower fellow Cubans to express themselves through the use of technology. She has traveled throughout South America and Europe and has lived in Switzerland as well. Yoani has done incredible work to break through the barriers of access and get information out of Cuba and into the global conversation. Last week, Yoani spoke at the Google Ideas Summit in New York City, and we are proud to welcome her to the Google headquarters today. And just to set a little bit of context for everybody today, thinking about technology and access and free expression, Cuba's population is 11 million people, and only 2% of the country has internet access. Yoani's ability to share information from Cuba with the rest of the world is remarkable, and it is all made possible because of technology. She is what we call a blind blogger or a blind tweeter, relying on SMS technology to text information out and relying on her network of citizens, what we call her citizen network around the world, to post. And so she can't see the responses, the comments, the conversation that's happening in both directions. And it's pretty remarkable and incredible. And we're delighted to have her with us. Please join me in welcoming Yoani Sánchez.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I also want to welcome and thank Natalia from Roots of Hope for being our translator today. So Yoani, welcome to Google. It's an honor to have you with us.
Muchísimas gracias. Siento que hoy estoy realizando algunos sueños. No quiero pellizcarme, no vaya a ser que me despierte, ¿no?
I feel that today I'm realizing many dreams. I don't want to pinch myself in case I wake up.
Well, tell us about your experience growing up in Cuba. What were your high school and university years like?
Cuéntanos sobre tu...
Bueno, en realidad yo tengo una profesión que no tiene nada que ver con la tecnología.
In reality, my profession has absolutely nothing to do with technology.
En algún lugar de mi casa, que ahora no recuerdo, hay un diploma que dice que yo soy filóloga, una persona especialista en la lengua española, en la literatura.
In some corner of my house that I now cannot remember, there is a certificate, a diploma, that says that I'm a philologist, studied Spanish language and literature.
Pero en realidad desde muy pequeña me interesó todo aquello que tenía circuitos, cables. Me gustaba desarmar electrodomésticos desde muy pequeña, ¿no?
But in reality, from a very young age, I was interested in all that had circuits and cables, and I was very intrigued by house appliances and housewares.
Así.
So you have always loved technology, as you said, and it's my understanding that you built your first computer in 1994 and called it Frankenstein. Can you tell us about how you created that and how you sourced the parts for Frankenstein?
Exactamente. En el año 1994 yo ensamblé mi primer ordenador, ¿no?
In 1994, I put together my first computer.
Era un momento que en Cuba prácticamente nadie había oído hablar de qué era una computadora ni la había visto, ¿no?
At that time in Cuba, almost no one had even heard of what a computer was and definitely had not seen one.
Pero como somos un país con un mercado ilegal muy fuerte que tiene mucha presencia en la vida cotidiana,
But since we are a country with a very robust illegal market, black market,
empecé a comprar, a intercambiar piezas para crear mi primer Frankenstein, ¿no?
I began to purchase and exchange parts and pieces to make my first Frankenstein.
Recuerdo que tenía una máquina para depilar las piernas, muy dolorosa, que la cambié por un microprocesador, ¿no?
I remember that I had a machine for depilating legs that used to be pretty painful that I traded in for a microprocessor.
Era una computadora 286, no sé si recuerdan la prehistoria de las computadoras, ¿no? 286 era el modelo.
The model was 286.
Sí. MS2 6.2 y WordPerfect 5.1.
Again, this one, I don't know if I know this one. MS2.
MS2 6.2.
DOS, like the version 1.0.
The DOS
basically.
version 1.0, yeah.
It's amazing.
I'm not accustomed to hearing it in Spanish. But yeah, I'm sorry.
You have always been such an entrepreneur, and it's an honor to have you here at Google today. Our mission as a company is to organize all the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. And we think a lot about this piece called access. Talk to us about the current state of access in Cuba.
El acceso en sí. Nosotros los cubanos vivimos en la isla de los desconectados, ¿no?
We Cubans live in an island of disconnect.
Y no es una metáfora, es que somos el país del hemisferio occidental con menor conectividad a Internet, ¿no?
And it's not really a metaphor, it is that because we are the country with the lowest internet penetration in the Western Hemisphere.
Las cifras oficiales dicen que alrededor del 15% de la población tiene acceso a Internet, pero es mentira, ¿no?
Official figures say that around 15% of the population has access to internet, but that's false.
La realidad es que en ese 15% hay muchas personas que solamente tienen acceso a una intranet local o a correo electrónico.
The reality is that within that 15%, there are many people who only have access to an intranet or to email.
Una hora de conexión a Internet en un lugar público cuesta alrededor de $5 en un país donde el salario mensual no supera los $20, ¿no?
1 hour of connectivity in a kind of a public hotspot place costs $5 an hour in a country where the average monthly salary does not exceed $20.
No es posible para un ciudadano normal ir a una oficina y contratar una conexión doméstica de Internet.
It is not possible for an ordinary citizen to go somewhere and take out a home internet connection or landline.
Es necesario cumplir ciertos requisitos ideológicos y ser una persona muy confiable para poder acceder a Internet desde casa, ¿no?
You must meet certain ideological prerequisites and be a highly trustworthy person to qualify for internet access.
Sin embargo, a pesar de esas restricciones, los cubanos somos muy hábiles en buscar todo lo que está prohibido, censurado o controlado.
Despite all of these restrictions, Cubans are very capable at circumventing and finding ways around all that is censored or prohibited.
Así que como mismo hay un mercado ilegal para comprar huevos, carne o leche, hay un mercado ilegal para comprar información, páginas web y audiovisuales, ¿no?
So same as there is a black market to purchase eggs, beef, or milk, there is a black market for the purchase of, for the acquisition of information, audio-visual files, and so on.
So let's talk about getting information, stories from Cuba out. How did you begin blogging, and what was the real impetus for you?
Empecé en abril del año 2007.
I started in April of 2007.
Un par de años antes había comenzado un proyecto colectivo de una revista digital, la primera revista digital crítica hecha desde Cuba.
Several years before that, I had started a kind of a collective communal project for the first ever digital magazine in Cuba that was critical.
Tuve que aprender de manera autodidacta a escribir en HTML.
I had to learn in a very autodidactic fashion to write in HTML.
Y en un momento me sentía bien con la revista, pero quería también tener un espacio personal, ¿no?
And at a certain time, I felt great. I felt good about the magazine, but I also wanted a space for personal expression.
Así que creé una página en HTML muy rústico y la subí a internet con el nombre de Generación Y, ¿no?
As such, I created a very kind of bare bones HTML page, and I uploaded it to the internet under the title Generation Y.
No sabía que existían servicios como Blogspot, Blogger, ¿no? O WordPress o Typepad, no sabía.
I was unaware that there were services such as Blogger or WordPress or Typepad.
Así que cada vez que iba a actualizar un post nuevo en mi blog, bajaba la página y subía una nueva por FTP.
And so every time that I wanted to update my blog, I would completely take down the page and then upload a new page.
Y es especialmente un espacio para narrar la realidad.
And really, it's a space for narrating reality.
Las pequeñas historias cotidianas que la prensa oficial no menciona, ¿no?
The little quotidian stories that the official press does not mention.
How are you sourcing these stories? How are you, who are they? How are you getting them?
Yo solo narro lo que he vivido, ¿no?
I only recount that which I have lived.
O sea, trato de que todas las pequeñas historias de mi blog tengan vinculación con una experiencia personal, algo que me ha tocado, ¿no?
I try so that I attempt to have every story on my blog be very linked to something that has personally happened or that is related to me.
No soy una analista, ni una académica, ni una especialista en nada exactamente, ¿no?
I'm neither an analyst or an academic or a specialist in anything really.
Y no me gusta entender el periodismo como un entomólogo de bata blanca impecable que mira el hormiguero, a los insectos y escribe sus notas en un papel, ¿no?
And I don't like to view journalism as a researcher in a lab coat looking down at ants and recording their movements.
A mí me gusta hacer el periodismo de la hormiga desde dentro del hormiguero, ¿no?
My kind of journalism is the journalism of the ant inside the anthill.
Wonderful analogy. So you has taken a tremendous amount of courage and bravery to put these stories out there. I know you've received numerous threats and been in danger several times. Talk to us, what's the scariest thing that's happened to you?
Bueno, he tenido momentos muy difíciles en 6 años de escribir un blog, ¿no?
I have had very difficult times and moments in the 6 years of writing the blog.
También he tenido momentos muy lindos, ¿eh?
I've also had very beautiful ones.
Pero uno de los más complicados fue mi primer arresto por la policía política, ¿no?
But one of the most complicated ones was my first arrest.
Y es una historia de dolor, pero también una historia de tecnología, ¿no?
And it is a story of pain, but it is also a story about technology.
De la importancia que tiene la tecnología en la protección de activistas en Cuba.
And the importance that technology has in the protection of Cuban activists.
Fue exactamente el 6 de noviembre del año 2009.
It was on November 6th of 2009.
Junto a unos amigos íbamos a participar en una pequeña demostración alternativa contra la violencia.
With several friends, we were going to participate in an alternative peaceful protest against violence.
Y justo antes de salir, una amiga que iba conmigo me dijo, hay un poco de tensión, voy a escribir un SMS para enviar a Twitter, pequeño paréntesis, los cubanos enviamos tweets al ciberespacio a través de mensajes de solo texto, ¿no?
So as a tangent, Cubans send Twitter or tweet using SMS messages from their phones. So as we were getting ready to leave, one of my friends noticed some tension in the surrounding area due to the protest, and so she said that she was going to write a tweet in her drafts.
Y mi amiga escribió un mensaje que guardó en la bandeja de salida que decía, estamos detenidos.
And so she wrote, just in case, a message that she saved in her drafts that said, we've been detained.
Yo recuerdo que le dije, uy, eso da mala suerte, ¿no?
I remember thinking and saying that augurs bad luck.
Y exactamente, cuando íbamos allá, un auto de la policía política con 3 hombres muy fornidos nos interceptaron y me metieron a mí a la fuerza en el auto, ¿no?
And sure enough, on our way there, a police car pulled us over and forced 2 of us into the back seat.
Yo iba de cabeza y había un hombre muy fornido que tenía su rodilla sobre mi esternón, ¿no?
They turned me upside down, and there was a very strong man that placed his knee on my chest.
Y el auto empezó a moverse por la ciudad, ¿no?
And the car started to move through Havana.
En un momento, el chofer recibió una llamada, habló brevemente, se viró hacia atrás y le dijo al hombre fornido que me apretaba.
And at a certain point, the driver of the car picked up a phone call, spoke briefly, and turned to the man in the back seat.
No la aprietes mucho, que ya lo saben.
And said, don't press her too much because they already know.
Yo sentí que el pajarito azul de Twitter había venido a rescatarme, ¿no? Porque el tweet que mi amiga había enviado por SMS había llegado a internet y la reacción de la gente había significado una protección para mí, ¿no?
At that moment, I felt that the little bluebird of Twitter had come to save me because the tweet that my friend had been able to send out had gone and returned in the form of protection via the response, the virtual response that had come to her tweet.
Por eso también soy una apasionada de la tecnología, ¿no?
For this reason as well, I am very passionate about technology.
Incredible.
Sí.
Really incredible. You are such a vital voice representing so many generations of Cubans. What messages would you like to share with our community about the Cuban people?
Yo diría que los cubanos tenemos el mensaje que me gustaría transmitir hoy aquí, que estoy en la meca de la tecnología, ¿no?
The message that I would like to transmit today, now that I'm here, the Mecca of technology,
Es los cubanos queremos sentirnos ciudadanos del siglo XXI.
is that we Cubans would like to feel ourselves as citizens of the 21st century.
Y no solamente por tener libertad o un espacio de derechos donde expresarnos, sino también para tener acceso a la tecnología y a Internet, ¿no?
And not only in the sense of freedom or self-expression, but also in terms of access to technology.
Los cubanos tienen muchos apetitos de tecnología.
Cubans have have a robust appetite for technology.
A veces alguien está en un taxi colectivo, un Chevrolet del año 56 en La Habana, a punto de destruirse, y de pronto suena un teléfono, ¿no?
Sometimes people will be crammed into a car from the 50s, falling apart and wrecking along in Havana, and a cell phone will ring.
Y cuando la persona saca el teléfono del bolsillo, es un Samsung Galaxy S3.
And when the person takes out their phone from their pocket, it's a Samsung Galaxy S3.
Porque los cubanos tienen tantos deseos de sentirse hombres modernos, hombres y mujeres modernas, que están fascinados con las nuevas tecnologías, ¿no?
Because Cubans have such a desire to associate themselves as men and women of the 21st century that they really thirst for technology.
Así que ayúdennos a ser ciudadanos del siglo XXI.
And as such, please help us be citizens of the 21st century.
You could trade that Samsung for the Frankenstein parts. You know? So here within the room, you know, we have many Googlers who are
Sure.
passionate about learning how they can help and be a part of the journey forward. So what would you like to see from Google, or how can people in this room who are interested in getting involved?
Bueno, hay muchas formas de ayudar. Yo creo que lo principal es darse cuenta que en Cuba los que logramos expresar una voz no oficial somos unos pocos, pero estamos narrando una realidad y el discurso oficial tiene mucho espacio para narrarse. Nosotros somos unos pocos narrando la Cuba real y el discurso oficial tiene todos los recursos para narrar la Cuba de las propagandas políticas, ¿no?
I would say there are many ways to help. One important thing to realize is that the official narrative in Cuba has many avenues for dissemination and for propaganda, but the voices of dissent and opposition and free thinkers in Cuba have very few and limited avenues for dissemination.
Así que sería muy útil ayudar a ese pequeño grupo que se atreve a opinar, amplificar su voz.
And so it would be very helpful to assist that small group that dares to opine differently in amplifying their voices.
No, necesitamos herramientas para las condiciones específicas de Cuba, que son un poco difíciles de comprender porque es como un viaje al pasado en la máquina del tiempo, ¿no?
We need tools that are very specific to the Cuban circumstances, which is difficult for other people to understand because it is like time traveling back.
Todas las herramientas que permiten copiar sitios para distribución offline o todas las herramientas, por ejemplo, para poner en una memoria flash son trascendentales para nosotros, ¿no?
Any tool that allows for the downloading and processing of information offline, or that interacts with USB drives or flash drives, on or off information, are transcendental in Cuba.
Me encantaría ver una versión portable de Chrome.
I would love to see a
¿Por qué no?
mobile or portable version of Chrome. Not mobile, portable.
So what are some of your favorite products, technology and some products?
Yo soy muy tecnológica.
I am very technological.
Me gusta Mac,
I love Apple.
sí. Y no voy a mostrarles la colección de aplicaciones que tengo porque...
I won't show you the collection of apps that I have because it's too much.
pero trato cada vez de concentrar todo mi trabajo en un periférico, en un gadget.
But I try to concentrate all of my effort usually in one gadget.
Es cuestiones también de sobrevivencia, porque si la policía viene y tengo una laptop, una cámara, un móvil, un memory flash, entonces ellos pueden confiscar más objetos, ¿no?
It's also a matter of survival because if the police come to raid and I have a phone, a camera, a laptop, a USB drive, there are more items for them to take and more items for me to protect.
De manera que utilizo mucho los teléfonos inteligentes, donde pueda grabar, tomar notas, escribir, hacer buenas fotos.
As such, I use smartphones a lot because they allow me to record, write, take photos, and do a lot of other things.
Estoy fascinada con el Samsung Galaxy S3 con Android,
I'm fascinated with the Samsung Galaxy S3 with Android,
pero ahora tengo en el bolsillo un iPhone.
but at the moment, I have in my pocket an iPhone.
So I'm very curious. You talk about this concept of the citizen network and all the global community around you who is helping disseminate this information. How have you built that network over time?
Sí, la solidaridad humana es infinita, ¿no?
Human solidarity is infinite.
Mi gobierno dice que mi blog es tan conocido y se traduce a tantas lenguas porque la CIA ha construido mi blog y mi persona, ¿no?
My government says that my blog has so much traction and following because the CIA has built my blog and my persona.
Pero realmente detrás está una fuerza más poderosa, la amistad.
But in reality, behind that is a much more powerful force, friendship
Y la solidaridad ciudadana.
and civic solidarity.
Es increíble lo que la gente está dispuesta a hacer por ti, a darte, cuando tu discurso o tu mensaje les toca el corazón, ¿no?
It's really incredible what people are willing to do and help with when your narrative and your story touches them.
Y aquí está María Porter, que es mi traductora al inglés del blog y además la persona que organiza una red de traductores en todas partes del planeta, ¿no?
And here's an example is Mary Jo Porter, who is my translator, the translator of my blog into English, and also the person who organizes a network of translators for other Cuban blogs.
Y así otros ejemplos. Por estos pequeños aretes que son el símbolo de mi blog, los ha hecho para mí una lectora de Perú.
And so there are many examples. These earrings, which have the logo of my blog, Generation Y, were made for me by a reader from Peru.
Y un día en Twitter, a través de un mensaje, expliqué que tenía un problema respiratorio.
And one day in Twitter via message, I explained that I had a respiratory problem.
Semanas después, alguien tocó la puerta de mi casa, era una chica de Barcelona, y dice, Yoani, te traigo un aparato para inhalaciones.
And several weeks later, I heard a knock on my door, and it was a girl from Barcelona who said, Yoani, I brought you a machine for inhalating, like inhalation machine.
Friends all over the world. So I'd love to shift gears a bit and think about the future. So you're currently working on a new project. Tell us about it.
Sí, yo tengo una frase que hoy compartía con Roberta Jacobson en la charla, una frase en mi vida, que es un lema en mi vida, dice, yo prefiero estresarme que aburrirme.
I have a motto in life that I was sharing earlier today with Roberta Jacobson, that is, I prefer to be stressed than bored, rather than bored.
De manera que siempre me gusta tener muchos proyectos. Creo que la vida es tener proyectos, ¿no?
As such, I always like to have many projects. I believe that life is about having projects.
Y ahora tengo un proyecto periodístico, informativo y colectivo, ¿no?
At the moment, I have a project that is journalistic and deals with information, and it is a collective project.
Que es la creación de un periódico digital para hacer desde dentro de Cuba, lo cual es un gran reto porque hay poco acceso a Internet.
It is a project to create a digital newspaper from Cuba, which is quite a challenge due to the lack of access.
Un espacio para información, opinión, pero también para ir practicando la democracia 2.0, ¿no?
It's a place for opinions and information, but also a sphere for practicing democracy 2.0.
Donde las personas puedan hablar de temas como la dualidad monetaria, la pena de muerte, el matrimonio gay.
Where people can exchange opinions about the dual currency in Cuba or the death penalty, gay marriage.
Pero también un periódico para leer de tecnología.
But also a newspaper to read about technology.
And how is the journalism landscape in Cuba shifting at all right now?
Después de la llegada de los blogs y de Twitter al escenario nacional, creo que el periodismo independiente ha evolucionado mucho y el oficialista también ha tenido que cambiar.
After the arrival of blogs and Twitter to the national stage, independent journalism has certainly changed, but even official journalism has had to change.
Por ejemplo, el gobierno se ha dado cuenta que ya no puede esconder ciertas situaciones y ciertos hechos que ocurren en la realidad.
For example, the government has realized that it can no longer occult and hide certain events that happen in reality.
Entonces, la prensa oficial tiene que hablar de temas y situaciones que hace 20 años nunca hubiera mencionado, ¿no?
As such, the official narrative has to broach subjects that years ago it never would have.
Y el periodismo independiente también ha logrado mayor inmediatez.
In addition, independent journalism has also achieved greater immediacy.
Antes, cuando ocurría algún arresto, cuando una situación determinada, los periodistas independientes tenían que esperar que un medio extranjero los llamara por teléfono para narrar su noticia.
Before, if there had been an arrest or other event, independent journalists had to wait for calls from abroad to inquire or confirm that something had happened.
Ahora, con un móvil en la mano, sin acceso a Internet, cualquier ciudadano en cualquier punto del país puede enviar un tweet contándolo al momento, ¿no?
Now, with a cell phone in hand and no internet, any ordinary citizen from anywhere in Cuba can send a piece of news out.
Voy a darles un truco tecnológico. Vengo a Google también a darles un truco tecnológico.
I will give you a technological trick.
Para cuando estén en situaciones en que no tengan acceso a Internet por censura, por desastres climatológicos o naturales, o porque están en un lugar donde la señal no llega.
Whenever you are in a place that lacks internet, whether because you're in a highly censored place or a natural disaster has occurred or you simply don't have signal,
Es bueno que sepan que una red social como Twitter permite la publicación a través de mensajes de solo texto, ¿no?
it's good to know that social networks such as Twitter allow for publication on their medium through text message.
Es muy fácil. Solo tienen que tomar el número de servicio de Twitter y enviar 4 comandos.
It's very easy. All you have to do is take the service number, a particular service number for Twitter, and send 4 commands.
Start, yes, username, un password.
Start, yes, username, and password.
Y su número telefónico quedará conectado al número telefónico de Twitter y a tuitear sin internet.
And your phone number will then be linked to Twitter, and you can tweet without internet.
Espero que un día Google también haga una herramienta así para nosotros.
I hope that someday Google will also make such a tool for us.
There is actually, I mean, we do a lot of work in emerging markets focusing on how do we bring the next 4 billion online, and it's all about mobile, using SMS gateways, and absolutely, we launched a tool called Google Trader across Africa, which is allowing transaction of prices and currencies, or that sharing of information via mobile. So absolutely, I think it's very, very much a huge part of the future. And so I want to shift gears to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. And in my work with Google for Entrepreneurs, our mission is to empower the next generation of startups. We work with entrepreneurs in over 125 countries. What advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to break through? We have this notion that constrained resources breeds a lot of creativity. What's your advice for entrepreneurs looking to get started?
Sí, la creatividad, hace unos días en Google Ideas, yo decía que la creatividad es esa posibilidad de abrir una ventana cuando la puerta está cerrada, ¿no?
Just a few days ago when I spoke at Google Ideas, I said that creativity is having the possibility of opening a window when the door is closed.
La creatividad normalmente también es hija de la necesidad, ¿no?
And creativity is also necessity's daughter.
Lo más difícil es mantener la creatividad cuando se tienen todos los recursos y cuando se tienen todas las posibilidades, ¿no?
The hardest thing is to keep up and maintain your creativity when you have all resources available and all possibilities open.
Pero no deberían ser contradictorios, ¿no?
But that shouldn't be contradictory.
Así que un buen consejo es, por un minuto, póngase en la piel de alguien que tiene muy poco, ¿no?
And so a good piece of advice is to, for 1 second, place yourself in the skin of someone who has very little.
Por una vez póngase en la piel de un ciudadano en un país sin acceso a internet, que no puede pagar por PayPal, que nunca ha podido comprar un ticket de avión por internet.
So place yourself in the skin of a citizen in a country that lacks internet, that does not have access to PayPal, that has never been able to purchase a flight ticket via the internet.
Póngase en el lugar de una persona que jamás ha podido ver online un video de YouTube.
Place yourself in the shoes of a person who has never been able to see online a YouTube video.
O que, como es mi caso, muchas veces no sé ni cuántos seguidores tengo en Twitter porque no puedo verlo, ¿no?
Or such as is my case, often I can't even see how many followers I have on Twitter.
Creo que eso sería un buen ejercicio para potenciar la creatividad, ¿no?
I would say that that would be a good exercise to engender creativity.
Y sobre todo pensar que todo lo que puedan crear aquí termina llegando por caminos complicados y ventanitas pequeñas, pero termina llegando hasta nosotros, ¿no?
And also to remember that anything that is created here or elsewhere, often in roundabout and small ways, reaches us in Cuba.
I'd like to do a brief thing we think of as free word association. So I'm going to say one word and ask you to say the first word that comes to your mind.
Dale, dale.
Okay.
Okay?
Me gusta.
She likes that.
Internet.
Internet.
Compañía,
Compañía. Friendship.
Technology.
libertad,
Freedom.
Courage.
temblor,
Trembling.
Family.
of columna, columna,
Column. Pillar.
Hope.
futuro,
Future.
Mobile phones.
adicción.
Addiction.
My husband is here.
Yeah.
He
My
now,
husband is
he
here,
now.
he knows.
He knows.
My last word for you is meat stew.
Picadillo de carne sin carne e internet sin internet.
Meat stew without meat and internet without internet.
Creatividad.
Creativity.
Before we open it up for questions, please join me in a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nowhere is there a better example of this notion that constraint breeds tremendous creativity, and you are just a living testament to all that is possible. And we really thank you for taking the time to share your insights with us. And I know a lot of my colleagues likely have questions. If you could just speak loudly, and I'll repeat it for the benefit of those on video conference. Do you have hopes for Cuba?
Muchas.
I have many.
Cuba es precisamente un país con mucho potencial futuro.
Cuba is precisely a country with a lot of future potential.
Aunque ahora mismo tenemos un escenario de colapso económico y falta de libertades,
Although at this particular time we have a scenario of economic collapse and lack of freedoms,
Cuba tiene un capital humano increíble.
Cuba has an incredible human capital.
Es más, aquí en Google trabajan muchos cubanos, ¿no?
In fact, here in Google there work many Cubans.
O sea, el nivel profesional y académico es alto.
In fact, kind of professional academic levels are very high.
Y la gente está cada vez más deseosa de un cambio político, un cambio hacia la democracia, ¿no?
And people are more and more thirsting for political and economic change.
Así que no me extrañaría que para la mitad del siglo XXI seamos una potencia tecnológica, una potencia económica también de la zona, ¿no?
So it would not surprise me if halfway through the 21st century we were an economic or a technological powerhouse in the region.
Y tengamos nuestro propio Silicon Valley, ¿no?
And if we had our own version of Silicon Valley.
Voy a decir primero el argumento del gobierno, ¿no?
I'll first tell you the government's position.
El gobierno cubano explica la falta de conectividad y el poco acceso a Internet a partir de las restricciones del embargo norteamericano hacia Cuba, ¿no?
The Cuban government explains the lack of internet and access based firmly on the American embargo.
Las mismas restricciones que hacen que algunos servicios de Google no puedan ser usados en Cuba.
The same restrictions that mean that certain Google services cannot be used in Cuba.
Sin embargo, ese argumento perdió veracidad hace ya 2 años cuando se instaló un cable de fibra óptica entre Venezuela y Cuba, ¿no?
However, this argument has lost its truthfulness after several years ago a fiber optic cable was installed from Venezuela to Cuba.
El cable en este momento está operativo, pero el gobierno ha decidido utilizar el cable para abrir 118 puntos públicos de acceso a Internet a lo largo de todo el país.
At this point, at this moment in time, the cable is functional, but the government has decided to use it to open 118 public internet access spots across the country.
No parecen estar interesadas las autoridades cubanas en dar acceso doméstico ni acceso a través de la telefonía móvil.
The authorities do not seem interested in granting personal home internet access or access through mobile phones.
Y los precios también son altos como manera prohibitiva para que pocos cubanos puedan acceder, ¿no?
And the prices are also high as a means of kind of being cost prohibitive for most ordinary Cubans.
La razón, miedo a Internet.
The reason is fear of the internet.
Un sistema que se ha basado en la desinformación, en el silencio, en la manipulación de la noticia, no puede sobrevivir a la avalancha informativa de Internet, ¿no?
A system that has based itself on the limitation of information and on the controlling of a narrative cannot possibly survive kind of the avalanche of information that comes from the internet.
Yeah, I've always wondered how the Castro brothers have been able to get the Cuban people to tolerate that much. And I understand that they have lots of controls, but there's also not a violent reaction. So they got to manage a certain level of they got to achieve a certain level of tolerance among the people. And I see that in my country as well, in Venezuela, where after 14 years of revolution, we are having a very extreme scarcity now, and people fighting for a little of milk in the grocery stores, and the government still has 50% popularity. So how is that process of getting people accustomed?
Bueno, hay muchas razones para esa inercia social, ¿no?
There are many reasons for this social inertia.
En primer lugar, mi generación no conoce otra cosa.
Firstly, my generation does not know of any other
Mi
form.
madre nació en el castrismo, yo nací en el castrismo y mi hijo, que tiene 18 años, nació en el castrismo.
My mother was born under the Castros, I was born under the Castros, and my son, who is 18 years old, was also born under the Castros.
Si el castrismo demora unos años más, mis nietos van a nacer en el castrismo.
If the Castros last several more years, my grandchildren will be born under them.
Eso siempre crea la sensación de que no puedes cambiar nada, de que es como una maldición con la que naciste que no puedes transformar, ¿no?
This creates the sensation that you cannot change anything, that it is a curse with which you have been born and cannot change.
Otra cuestión es que la rebeldía en Cuba se ha expresado durante décadas no enfrentando al gobierno, sino escapando.
Another issue or comment is that rebelliousness in Cuba for decades has been expressed in leaving and escaping and not in confronting.
Es muy triste, pero una buena parte de los cubanos prefiere enfrentarse a un tiburón en el estrecho de la Florida que a un policía político en la calle, ¿no?
It's very sad, but a majority of Cubans, or a significant portion of Cubans, prefer to face a shark in the Florida Straits than a policeman in the streets of Havana.
Otra razón es que el sistema cortó toda la infraestructura económica que le podía dar autonomía a la sociedad civil, ¿no?
Yet another reason is that the government cut all of the infrastructure that would have allowed kind of economic independence to civil society.
Y toda la infraestructura informativa paralela e independiente al gobierno, ¿no?
And severed all informational infrastructure parallel to the government.
En las primaveras árabes, por ejemplo, la tecnología jugó un papel importantísimo para convocarse y para ir a las plazas, ¿no?
In the nations of the Arab Spring, for example, technology was a primary tool for the population to communicate and congregate.
Pero en Cuba, ¿cómo le hago saber a mi vecino que pienso igual que él, no?
But in Cuba, how can I communicate to my neighbor that I agree with him?
Sin embargo, yo creo que ahora poco a poco los cubanos están despertando.
Despite this, I do believe that Cubans are slowly waking up.
Bueno, yo soy muy crítica. Siempre me ha parecido que el embargo es el gran pretexto que tiene el gobierno cubano para justificar desde el colapso económico la falta de libertades, ¿no?
I'm very critical. I've always perceived that the U.S. restrictions are the excuse of the Cuban government, the scapegoat of the Cuban government for justifying everything from kind of economic situation to the lack of liberties.
Por eso me gustaría que el embargo terminara hoy mismo o mañana mismo, a ver cómo van a explicar que no tenemos acceso a internet ni posibilidad de fundar otros partidos, ¿no?
As such, I would like for the embargo to end tomorrow to see how the Cuban government would explain the lack of access to the internet or the inability to form other political parties.
El nivel educativo en Cuba ha sufrido mucho en los últimos años también en cuanto a su calidad, ¿no?
The quality of the educational system in Cuba has also suffered significantly in recent years.
O sea, hay un mito muy exportado al mundo de que tenemos una salud pública y una educación excelente, ¿no?
There is a popular myth exported from Cuba that we have excellent public health systems and educational systems.
Lo cierto es que es extensiva para todos y hay escuelas en cada punto del país, pero la calidad ha caído mucho, ¿no?
In truth, it is extensive and reaches everyone in the country, but the quality has declined.
Cuando terminó el subsidio soviético, la economía cubana evidentemente no podía sostener esa infraestructura educativa y de salud pública, ¿no?
When Soviet subsidies were halted, the Cuban infrastructure could not maintain the educational or medical infrastructure that had been set up.
Entonces ha habido un éxodo tremendo de maestros. Un maestro de una universidad tecnológica en Cuba que imparte clases de informática o tecnología tiene un salario máximo $30 al mes.
As such, there has been a huge exodus of teachers and instructors. An instructor, for example, of technology and software and kind of information systems would have a maximum monthly salary of $30 a month.
Y además de las limitaciones salariales está el excesivo adoctrinamiento de la educación, ¿no?
And in addition to the financial restrictions or limitations, there's also the issue of significant political indoctrination of the educational system.
Es muy difícil para un profesor de informática estar en un aula con 30, 40 estudiantes que no tienen acceso a internet. ¿Cómo enseñar informática sin internet, no?
It's very difficult for a professor of technology or information systems to be in a classroom with students who do not have access to the internet. How do you teach that?
Y también hay una intención del gobierno de hacer ver internet como un campo de batalla ideológico.
And there's also the government has an intention to make the internet, to paint the internet as a battlefield.
Así que se preparan muchos soldados de internet, ¿no?
So they prepare a lot of soldiers to wage battle.
Todo lo que yo les pueda contar es poco.
Everything that I can tell you is still little.
Pero en Cuba tenemos una unidad de ciencias informáticas donde muchos estudiantes se dedican especialmente a algo que se llama la batalla de ideas en la web, ¿no?
But in Cuba, we have a specific department in which students focus on waging ideological battles on the internet.
Desde la creación de blogs oficialistas hasta personas que van a los foros para desviar las discusiones hacia la opinión del Partido Comunista.
From blogs that are in line with government thinking to people that enter other forums or comment on other blogs to guide the discussion more in favor to the positions of the government.
Y para ellos yo soy una especie de Satán de la web, ¿no?
And for them, I am a kind of internet devil.
Entonces, imagino que debe ser muy difícil para un profesor que está enseñando tecnología, que tiene una mente moderna, además tener que aceptar los límites de la ideología, ¿no?
And so I imagine that it's very difficult for an instructor of anything that touches the internet and who has a more modern mind to be teaching anything that touches with technology.
Last question, if I may.
Sí.
What is your greatest hope for Cuba and for the future?
Pienso que Cuba necesita libertad, ¿no? Necesita libertad.
I think that Cuba needs freedom.
La libertad de poderme parar en una esquina y gritar, aquí no hay libertad, ¿no?
The freedom to stand on a corner and scream, here, there's no liberty here.
El día que yo pueda hacer eso en una calle de La Habana, sentiré que mi país ha cambiado y ha entrado en el futuro, ¿no?
The day that I can do that in a street in Havana, I will feel that my country has entered the future.
On behalf of all of us here, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.